They crushed his truck beneath a roaring bulldozer, then froze the instant they saw the military plates, realizing too late they'd picked a fight with the wrong black veteran. Galen Price, a tall, broad-shouldered black man with a quiet presence and eyes that had seen too much, sat on his porch that morning, sipping black coffee from a chipped mug. The dawn was just breaking, peeling away the gray stillness that lingered over his peaceful cul-de-sac. After 22 years in the Army, 10 deployments, 2 Purple Hearts, and a spinal fracture that flared whenever the rain rolled in, this small corner of suburbia was supposed to be his peace. A modest home, a tidy garden, and his battered Dodge Ram parked proudly out front. That was all Galen wanted, all he needed, until the notices began showing up. At first, he'd thought it was a joke, a single sheet tucked under his windshield wiper with a red stamp that read, "Non-compliant vehicle subject to enforcement." No letterhead, no city seal, just a phone number and a strange stamp from something called the Neighborhood Compliance Task Force. He chuckled, tossed it in the trash, and went on with his day. But the next morning, there were 3 of them, taped across his driver's side window. The day after that, he found one nailed, literally nailed, to the tree in his front yard. It read, "Remove unauthorized vehicle within 48 hours or risk asset seizure." Seizure of his own truck. Galen double-checked with the city's website. No such department existed. No code enforcement was listed for his zip code. His plates were valid. His tags were military. Clear as day. Still, he called the number. "This is the HOA Enforcement Division," a clipped voice answered. "Please direct further communication through your compliance liaison." "What HOA?" Galen asked flatly. A pause, then silence. The line went dead. He walked over to his neighbor Carolyn West's house. She'd lived there 20 years, knew every pothole, every city worker by name. "I didn't know we had an HOA," he said. Carolyn bit her lip, eyes darting. "We didn't until recently. Some new folks moved in, started sending out letters. People thought it was real. It's not. I'm staying out of it, but you should move that truck." That night, Galen didn't sleep well. 2 days later, a man showed up at his door, a guy in his mid-30s wearing a fluorescent vest, mirrored sunglasses, and a clipboard like it made him powerful. "You've been served," the man said curtly. "Final notice." "Final notice for what?" Galen asked, folding his arms. "Vehicle abandonment, code non-compliance, and obstruction of visual line of sight." Galen frowned. "You're quoting gibberish," he said, "and there's no legal HOA here." The man didn't flinch. "You have until Friday. Have you ever had someone threaten you on your own property, thinking their fake authority could scare you into submission? What would you do if fake HOA enforcement showed up at your door?" Before we go further, what city or country are you watching from right now? Drop it in the comments. We love seeing where our viewers are tuning in from. And if you believe no one should ever be threatened on their own property, smash that like button and subscribe to Story Arc for stories that show what happens when the wrong people pick the wrong target. Galen didn't move his truck. Friday arrived bright and peaceful. For a moment, it felt like any other spring morning, until the low growl of diesel broke the calm. The sound grew louder. He stepped outside, and what he saw froze him in place. A yellow bulldozer was rumbling down the street. No city insignia, no company logo, just a blank, steel monster crawling straight toward his parked Dodge Ram. Galen sprinted to the curb. "Hey, that's my truck! What the hell are you doing?" The man in the vest stood beside the bulldozer, directing the driver with 2 fingers. When Galen shouted again, the man turned, smirked. "It's an unauthorized structure," he said coldly. "You're obstructing compliance. Step back." Galen didn't move, but neither did the bulldozer stop. With a sickening crunch, the blade slammed into the side of his truck. Tires burst like gunfire. The hood crumpled. The vehicle lifted and twisted sideways as if it weighed nothing. Glass shattered across the pavement like falling hail. Galen was shouting. Neighbors screamed. Someone was filming. He charged toward the bulldozer, fists clenched, fury boiling in his chest. Then the driver froze, finally seeing it. The military license plate, bent but still readable. The Purple Heart decal. The disabled veteran placard dangling from the mirror. And then he looked up into Galen's face. Stone, unmoving, trained. The bulldozer's engine cut off with a choking rumble. The driver climbed down, trembling. The man in the vest, his confidence gone, took one look at Galen and backed away like he'd just seen a ghost. Galen didn't say a word. He just turned and walked back inside. Minutes later, he stood in the wreckage of what had once been his truck. The smell of gasoline and burnt rubber hung thick in the air. Shards of glass crunched beneath his boots. He didn't shout. He didn't cry. He simply stared, his jaw tight, his fists rigid at his sides, while the fake compliance officer slipped quietly away up the street. Then he called 911. The dispatcher sounded confused. They bulldozed your vehicle? Sir, do you have the license plate number of the bulldozer? I have the whole damn VIN, Galen snapped. They brought it to my street like they were clearing land. This was criminal. 20 minutes later, 2 patrol officers showed up, both young, one of them still wearing braces. They took photos, asked a few questions, and promised to file a report. Sir, do you have any video evidence of the damage being done? One asked. I've got 6 neighbors who filmed it, Galen said. That's good, the officer nodded. But just to confirm, this was done by your HOA? No, Galen replied firmly. A group pretending to be an HOA. He handed them the stack of fake violation slips. One of the officers frowned as he flipped through them. Sir, this isn't even legal formatting, he said. These aren't city codes. You think I don't know that? Galen growled. I worked base security for 5 years. I can smell a scam a mile away. The next day, the police called back. They'd spoken with the so-called Neighborhood Compliance Task Force. According to the group, Galen's vehicle had been marked abandoned per their community bylaws, and he'd ignored 6 official notices. Galen stared at the email the police forwarded him. One line stood out in bold. The demolition was authorized under Clause 14B of Local Private Ordinance Protocols. Clause 4B? Galen muttered. What even is that? He immediately called his insurance company. The insurance adjuster's voice was flat, robotic. We're seeing that your vehicle was destroyed as part of a private enforcement action under a non-municipal housing authority. That would be considered a civil dispute, not covered under standard property protection. So someone can bulldoze my truck, Galen said slowly, and I'm the one stuck with the bill? Unless you can prove it was criminal, she replied, without emotion. He hung up. That night, Galen sat alone in his garage, the smell of oil and dust thick in the air. He heard gravel crunch outside. Through the window, headlights glared, a silver Prius idling at the end of his driveway. A young man climbed out wearing cargo pants and, unmistakably, the same yellow vest as before. Galen opened the garage door slowly, saying nothing. The man marched up, clipboard in hand, already talking. You are now in breach of... He stopped mid-sentence. His eyes locked on the interior of the garage, the shadow box, the uniform, the bent military plates laid out beside the wrecked remains of the Dodge Ram. Then his gaze landed on Galen, arms crossed, silent, unmoving, a black man whose calm was far more dangerous than anger. I think there's been a miscommunication, the man stammered. You came to the wrong house, Galen said quietly. The guy's hands went up. We didn't know about your affiliation. If you just work with us, maybe we can settle. Is that a threat? Galen asked, his tone flat, unreadable. No, just a resolution path. Look, we'll reimburse you. I don't want your reimbursement, Galen replied. I want your paper trail. The man hesitated. We don't exactly file with the city. That was it. Galen stepped forward. The man stumbled backward, tripped over the curb, and scrambled into his Prius. The Prius sped away down the street. Galen stood there a moment longer, jaw tight. What kind of enforcement agency doesn't file with the city? He thought. And how many of his neighbors had already fallen victim to these frauds? The next morning, there was a knock at his door. Carolyn stood outside, pale and shaking, holding an envelope. They just fined me $300, she whispered, for unapproved garden gnomes. Galen, they're targeting everyone. He looked at the letter. Same fake letterhead. Same ridiculous violation codes. No signature, just the same phone number and a P.O. box. I need to fight this, Carolyn said, voice trembling. You're not alone, Galen replied. But deep down, he already knew this was bigger than one truck, bigger than one street. By mid-morning, he was out knocking on doors with a clipboard in hand. Out of 42 homes in the neighborhood, he spoke to 27 residents over the next 2 days. Every single one had received at least one compliance violation. Half had paid fines. A few had even allowed the inspectors inside their homes. It was intimidation, plain and simple. One father of 3 told him, They said they'd put a lien on my house if I didn't remove my basketball hoop. They towed my daughter's car while she was still sitting inside it. Another neighbor said they'd been told their wind chimes were a safety hazard. They weren't just bullies, they were predators using fake authority to scare people into silence. Worse still, no one had ever seen an actual HOA election or a board or any transparency. Just threats, letters, and fines. So Galen started digging. He searched county records, nothing. No legally registered homeowners association for their subdivision, no articles of incorporation, no nonprofit filings, no charter, no board minutes, nothing existed. That evening, while he was away on investigation, his phone buzzed. Carolyn's voice came through, breathless and scared. "They're putting a notice on your house," she said. "They're saying you violated something called Defensive Architecture Ordinance 12A for your security lights." Galen didn't hesitate. Minutes later, he was speeding home. When he arrived, three men in yellow vests were on his property, one taping a notice to the window, another taking photos, the third holding a clipboard. "You're trespassing," Galen warned. "You're in violation," the clipboard man said, not even looking up. "I have a letter from the city clerk," Galen replied. "You have no authority here," the man smirked. "Got a restraining order?" "No." "Then we're conducting an inspection." Galen stepped closer. "You don't want to do this." The man froze when he spotted the body cam on Galen's chest. Military grade. "Smile," Galen said evenly. "You're about to star in a fraud case." The man cursed under his breath and waved his crew off. "You'll hear from our counsel," he muttered as they left. That night, a brick shattered Carolyn's front window. No witnesses. The police took a report. Nothing more. Galen didn't waste another minute. The next morning, he drove downtown to Channel 8 News, the biggest local station in the county. He didn't shout or make a scene. He just handed the receptionist a USB drive labeled Fake HOA. 3 hours later, a reporter called him back. "This can't be real," she said. "It's worse than real," Galen answered. "It's organized." 2 days later, the expose aired, a 3-minute bombshell. Footage of the bulldozed truck, neighbors describing threats, Carolyn crying beside her shattered window, and Galen standing before his garage with the fake demolition notice still taped to the wall. The response was immediate. Veterans groups shared it nationwide. Donations poured in. Headlines called it the suburban HOA that wasn't. And finally, justice moved. Galen got a call the next morning. "This is Assistant DA Monroe," a firm voice said. "We saw the report. We'd like to meet." He handed over everything. The forged letters, the permits, the videos. Investigators muttered words like racketeering and mail fraud. Weeks later, the bulldozer operator turned himself in. The ringleader tried to flee but was caught in Colorado. Galen received a check covering his truck and damages. He didn't cash it right away. He kept it folded inside his desk, beside the medals, the flag, and the beret. Because for Galen, a proud black veteran, this fight wasn't about money, it was about principle. Sometimes the real battle begins after the war, when the enemies wear polo shirts and carry clipboards. If you believe peace is worth defending even in your own neighborhood, smash that like button and subscribe to Story Arc for stories that turn quiet streets into battlefields for truth.